You guys are ready? Maybe we'll kick it off. All right. So yeah, thank you everyone for sticking around here. We're very excited that we have a full room, and I'm sure we'll get a couple of last-minute people coming in too. My name is Natan Edelsberg. I'm your moderator today. We're here to talk about live streaming, which is an extremely relevant and important topic. I'll give you some quick background on myself, mention what we're going to kind of go over, and then I'm going to hand it to our esteemed panelists to my left to tell everyone a little bit about what you guys do. Definitely, please start thinking about questions. We'll save some time at the end for questions. And if you're really eager and have a really good question, you're welcome to raise your hand and we'll try pausing, because I like making things as interactive as possible. It is being recorded, I've been told, and will be on Streaming Media's website later. And we, of course, have some expert live streamers here who might or might not be live streaming right now. So yeah, again, my name's Natan. I was asked to moderate this for a few different reasons. I help produce an awards show called the Shorty Awards, which has been live streamed since 2008, originally on livestream.com, more recently on YouTube. I also cover the industry for The Drum. I cover video and the future of TV, and we've been deeply, deeply covering this topic in a much bigger way since about a year and a half ago, when an app called Meerkat blew up at South by Southwest. So live streaming had been a very big part of the video industry even before that. But when that kind of blew up among consumers and live streaming became a bigger part of day-to-day social media life, for lack of better description, we put a lot of resources behind uncovering what it all means. Without further ado, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves and briefly say what they do and what their background is in relation to live streaming. And then we're going to have a discussion that has to do with how you can reach new audiences via live streaming, how you can monetize it. And yeah, we're excited to be here and looking forward to hearing from you as well. So we'll just go down the row, keep it simple. Mario, if you want to quickly just explain who you are and what you do.
Okay, so real quickly, I'm the guy that you may have seen on NBC, on the Today Show. I talk about technology, and I'm the digital lifestyle contributor for NBC Today Show. In that role, I talk about apps and technology and how you can use that and apply that to your life, to your passion, to your dreams, your goals, your family. In conjunction to that, since I'm a contributor to that network, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not a staffer by NBC. I have our own company called Mario Armstrong Media, which produces content for the web and for audiences online and on mobile, as well as in traditional spaces. And the biggest thing that we've been working on, I've done probably 1,000 or so hours in live streaming on Meerkat, Periscope, Facebook Live, and others that YouNow and MeVie and all of that stuff, and all accumulated, probably done about 1,000 hours, have watched and have become a part of the live streaming community. So I've seen a lot of use cases and how things are working and what's not working. And we're also, the biggest thing that I would say that we're working on is the fact that we're creating a brand new talk show format, or we're innovating the talk show format. This fall, we're going to be launching an in-studio talk show format program that's going to be the first live crowd-produced talk show. It's called the Never Settle Show, and it's live streamed. And people will be able to choose their topics, choose the guests, choose the questions, as well as the entertainment. We build that show for them, and then when we shoot it live, we give them all types of social media, live streaming apps, and other ways to actually be a part of the conversation in real time on the set through Instagram, Periscope, Snapchat, and more, to have their voice and their face be a part of the interview process or the other segments throughout the show.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and look forward to hearing more about how that came together later. Drew.
Sure. I'm way less interesting than Mario. I apologize. I'm watching this live stream now.
I can take you off.
No, it's all right.
How many viewers do we have so far?
If you're self-conscious.
I'm getting a lot of hearts, though, so I'm thinking
you are.
pretty popular. My name's Sheila Cisco. I run a team called AOL Alpha, which is at AOL Verizon. We are an R&D and Skunkworks team. The reason that I'm here is that my team has been highly focused on OTT and streaming platforms, and has been focused on kind of reconceptualizing what live and streaming media means for AOL and our brands like Huffington Post, AOL.com, TechCrunch, and Gadget, and so on. So we've been sort of doubling down on live as the announcements that happened at last week's New Fronts kind of talked about, but then also really embracing the newest technologies and platforms for streaming content, which I think is really interesting considering we're a very traditional media company in terms of text content. But the amount of video that we're producing on a regular basis has pretty much quadrupled over the last year. And I think we've got a great set of brands that we're really excited to bring all new platforms for. So yeah, that's it.
Great. Yeah, Wayne.
I'm Wayne Sieve. I'm the founder and CEO of Eversport Media. We are a OTT sports network. We distribute the live game broadcasts of about 8,000 or so live events a year, professionally produced, and it's maybe a third of those are produced for television, and it could be things like the Pac-12 Network's programming or Fox Sports programming. The other 2/3 is, let's say, amateur produced, but it's getting to a point now where you really can't see the difference because it is produced for OTT or broadband delivery, high quality with commentary and sound, etc. About half of the Pac-12's programming is produced for their television channels, and the other half is for us for OTT delivery. I'd say, we've been around for about 2 years now, and we are currently, I think, the largest consumer access point around the world for USA college programming. We stream about 4,000 live events. ESPN's, I think, has around 3,000 according to their marketing materials. And we stream a lot of soccer, cricket, rugby, action sports, and motorsports and other things around the world. We don't really compete with television. We pick up where television drops off, and if you factor in there are probably hundreds of thousands of live sports broadcasts produced around the world in all the countries around the world every year, maybe 1 or 2% of that you can access through your television wherever you may be. So we're really providing that additional connection point to programming that's not on television so that you can watch what you want to watch if it's not on TV. For example, New Zealand cricket or Japanese soccer or Big Sky college football or basketball, things like that. But I've been in the streaming business for about 16 years with Yahoo Sports and then Ustream, and now with Eversport.
Great, thank you. And Keith?
My name is Keith Zubchevich. I'm Chief Strategy Officer for Conviva. Wondering what I did to end up on a panel with a Today Show correspondent. Got to talk to Dan about that. But Conviva is a viewer experience management platform. So you're probably wondering, what does that do up here on the live streaming panel? The company's premise is founded on the fact that unlike broadcast television, where buffering, bit rates, and device performance never factored into a broadcast, anytime you put video on the internet, there's another variable that you have to take into consideration, and that's experience. So unlike broadcast television, where quality of content determines audience engagement, there's actually an entirely new equation that you have to manage as a broadcaster, regardless of content type, and that is, what's the viewer's experience as they start to consume my content online? Because if you get that wrong, what we see across the board is that content consumers will go either elsewhere or they'll find other content to watch, because of the fact that the experience is one very variable on the internet. But then the second thing is that consumers expect TV quality. And so as a publisher, you have to understand what your viewers' expectations are of you. And by the way, they vote with their eyeballs. They don't vote on social media. They don't fill out comment boxes. They'll just literally stop watching. So Conviva's platform basically runs where we collect every second of every viewer's experience, and we measure that against the resulting engagement pattern. So then you get to see what's working and what's not as it relates to a metric, but what's working and what's not as it relates to your audience's engagement. How do I increase engagement? How do I avoid churn? Those are things that can be seen in how you measure and monitor your experience.
Great, thank you. And Keith, I'll keep it with you at first, since you patiently waited to introduce yourself. So what are some of the challenges facing big companies now trying to live stream at scale? I think, we were talking a little bit outside, you hear bloggers covering anytime someone doesn't get to see Game of Thrones successfully on HBO Go, or a live streamed sports match that Yahoo runs has some issues. When those kinds of things happen, what are some of those issues that are being faced, and does Conviva play a role in helping that?
Absolutely. We do about 50 billion views a year. We do about 10 billion viewer hours worth of content a year across about 120 different premium publisher brands. We've done the Super Bowl, we've done the Olympics, we've done the World Cup. And one thing is clear across the board. Anytime, as I said, anytime you put video on the internet, you're impacted by the internet experience. And so, again, no matter what your content type is, you have to make sure the experience is good. That said, the interesting thing about live streaming is there's a fault-tolerant high availability issue now involved, meaning if the game has started or if the live event has started or the live stream has started, I want to watch it right now. So unlike download content, unlike VOD content where I'll wait a little bit because it's not live, my patience is a little longer. Live streaming, I got to watch it now, it's on, and if I'm missing it, I start to get frustrated. And so I think the pressure actually increases the need to understand the experience in real time, right? I can't look back to see what happened. I have to know now. I have to know now as the event is starting. I have to know during the event. I have to make sure that the event is continuing. So I would say that with live streaming, it's just the sense of urgency has increased because the viewer patience has decreased.
Yeah, well said. And I think, Eversport fits in nicely there because, like you mentioned, you pick up where TV leaves off. I guess, do you see in the future right now, I think, linear television has used live television as such a staple for why they're still relevant. While there's tons of new media experts who want to see their demise.
Right.
Do you see there being a point sometime when live sports is no longer an important thing for linear and instead it's delivered, like you said, anywhere, anytime?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think sports has to live in a linear environment. I think it just simply does because it did.
Right.
It isn't really, the necessity for it being on a linear program channel isn't really there. You're a fan, you're going to watch it wherever it may be. My dad's a Minnesota Twins fan. He lives in the Bay Area, and he gets MLB.TV because, he doesn't want to live in Minnesota.
Right.
And whether it's on a linear channel or through an OTT app or device, it is what it is. So I think it'll stay on linear channels as long as linear channels want to pony up the dollars to acquire those rights. But it doesn't necessarily have to. I mean, and it isn't. I would say it's not even entirely appointment-based programming. I mean, I don't go home anymore, and whether it's news or sports, go home and I got to be home at 6 to watch the news. I get news from all kinds of outlets, and if I miss the start of the game, it's okay. I got it on the DVR, or I'll watch it on my phone, whatever it may be. And I think an interesting thing we did last fall, Italian and Spanish League soccer, top divisions, were not available in Scandinavia last fall, and they didn't. The rights holder had not sold to linear television networks. So what did they do? They called us up and worked with us, and we streamed all games for both leagues, La Liga and Serie A, into Scandinavia, restricted to those 4 markets. And we had Eversport. We have a syndicatable video player for live programming, so we can embed our player onto other publishers' sites. So within a week or two, we had 65 publishers embedding our video player. If you wanted to watch the programming, you didn't need to go look for it on television. All you had to do is get on the internet. You're going to find it. Your friends are talking about it on social, or any sports site you go to in that region would have our player embedded onto it. So it wasn't in a linear sense. It wasn't in any other means than the game's on. I know where to watch it. I'm going to watch it through my mobile phone, my tablet, my desktop. I'm going to connect my computer to the TV screen if I want to have more of a lean back experience. So I don't see the relevance of linear television channels for sports programming. It is the reason certainly a lot of people aren't cutting the cord today, because the rights are with those networks. But it doesn't necessarily have to be there. People will watch the game and then leave. I mean, you're watching a linear channel, the game is on, boom, ratings are way up, the game is off, everybody leaves. So it's not because it's linear, it's because that's when the game is on.
Totally. Yeah, and out of curiosity, if there is an answer, why did the content owners decide not to sell to a linear channel in Scandinavia?
They couldn't get a deal done at the time. There's a bunch of sort of goofy nuances about it. It was a couple of things. The buyers and sellers couldn't agree on a price, and then English Premier League hadn't been sold yet in the market, and a lot of those same bidders are going to look at that one because it's a higher profile league in that market, and once that sells, then they'll take a look at the other 2 leagues. So there's some strange dynamics that occur in the marketplace, but it eventually did sell, and so we didn't do the entire league for the entire season, but it was a lot of fun while we were doing it.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds like legacy economics that don't necessarily benefit the consumer much, but that's great. So moving on to Drew. Sure. I know you mentioned a bit in your intro, but AOL obviously has had quite the year. The company was acquired by Verizon, which has a lot of content in addition to pipes to people's phones and devices and homes. And you had a really amazing Newfront presentation. Was anyone in the room there the other week?
We did have Demi Lovato. So if you're big fans of her, Snoop Dogg.
They did. It was open to the public.
Snoop, anyone?
Snoop? Yeah, no Snoop. No. Okay.
But they basically took over, and I'll let Drew speak in a second.
Sure.
But they took over South Street Seaport here in Manhattan, a whole area, and enabled not just a presentation where people are sitting and talking to you, kind of like now, but instead they had a really open experience, so people can really see what it's like to experience all different kinds of live content. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit more about one of the bigger announcements around live content that you guys are starting to produce in a big scale way and why you're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest announcements that we had was the opening of our Build Studio, which is going to be opening up in the old MLB Fan Cave space on Broadway. And I don't know if you've ever seen Build, but it's our celebrity interview series. And we bring in top flight talent every single day, 5 to 6 of them on a daily basis. Last week we had all of the cast of Civil War, Captain America, Daveed Diggs from Hamilton. And what's interesting is these are people usually on their press tours, but we're giving kind of premier access to our consumers by being able to watch these kind of like larger, more engrossing interview series, and actually allowing them to actually like get access to these celebrities by asking them questions. So we're going to be able to open this new space. It's going to be much bigger. We're going to be filming it in 360, so live streaming of 360 content directly onto Facebook and within Oculus, the partnership that we're building on right now. So it's really interesting. I think that what we're about right now in terms of live is context and access. So you can't just do video, like live video. So we tried that with Huffington Post. We kind of took a traditional media approach where we had, essentially 10 hours of live video every single day. Maybe we got 2 hours that was kind of interesting, maybe 10 minutes that was really viral, but that was it. So what we've done is we've taken a step back and we said, how are we going to approach live video? How do we make sure that people want to watch it in context and make sure that they have a purpose to do it? And so that's what we've really kind of taken that step back and reconceptualized our approach to it. And so sending out our Huffington Post Live team into the road during the elections, making sure that they're on premises when the when the elections are going on, interviewing people, and being there when things are happening. And I think that's really important. The same thing with Engadget being at the WWDC announcements in a couple weeks, or live streaming TechCrunch Disrupt. Those are things that really make sense in context, and that's what we really want to focus on and make sure that we're putting out really high quality, great live content that people want. It's really difficult in a time-shifted world, but I think we have a good strategy for it.
Yeah, totally. And I think you're beginning to see this trend on the higher end production. It's not only a lot more possible to produce live stream content on a mass way, but it's viable for businesses like theirs to monetize it and grow it in a way. Yeah. And I think the really impressive part is the incorporation of Oculus and 360, and just the fact that there's going to actually be a studio doing this just for the web, just on Facebook, shows you kind of the possibilities of it. And I think it's a first big step in seeing something like virtual reality not just be a kitschy toy, but actually a long-term investment.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there's consumers, everyday journalists, me and you, who have their iPhones and don't unfortunately have access to a professional studio yet. But Mario has done some amazing work to build out his company and his own brand. And so my first question for you is, before we hear a little bit about the show you guys are producing, so why did you start using these apps? And I know you're Periscoping a bit now, Facebook Live, there was Meerkat, there's some other ones I didn't hear of you told me about. Both why did you start doing this individually, and how would you describe some of the top differences between the platforms?
I would say it's because we live in an era now where everybody has the opportunity to really build your own media brand. You absolutely have more people that are creatives, that are trying to pursue their impact, their passions, and so they're using these platforms to really help to increase engagement, increase following. The thing about live streaming that a lot of people have figured out, especially after like Periscope Summit happened, which was a conference that happened here in New York City, like what people were really starting to figure out is, and it was something that I was talking about like, I guess the year before when Facebook Mentions actually came out, was that the relationships that are being created through live streaming are happening way, way faster. So in other words, relationships to fans, relationships to brands, relationships to consumers, to buyers, it's cutting down the amount of time that it would take for you to actually get to a collaboration or a transaction or a partnership. Because once they are interfacing and watching you in real time, they're learning a lot about you through your nonverbal communication. They're spending on average, this is Cisco's stats, spending on average 20 minutes watching live streaming. I don't know, for those of you that were in my earlier session, you probably heard that same stat. Pre-recorded video is being watched for 2 to 3 minutes. So that's a huge gap between what's happening live and what's happening pre-recorded. So you had people that were creating content, editing, scripting, going out with production crews and doing all this work and then trying to really place ads against it and keywords and all of this stuff to try to drive attention to it. And they're like, wait, if I just am one of the first to get on live streaming, I create some value of content or I take you to places that are exciting. So you're seeing everything from travel scopes to kitchen, scopes because Periscope, but travel streams, that's all going to change. Travel streams to kitchen streams to inspirational speakers, faith-based organizations, nonprofits, like so many different agencies, organizations are now seeing, wait, the democratization of technology is happening right here. And I don't have to hire all of this equipment that I had to before. And I actually already have a following on my Facebook fan page. Why am I not using Facebook Live on that? And so that kind of cat is out of the bag and people are trying to figure out now, how do I create something that's compelling? How do I create something that's high quality? Because I can do it on a very low cost system.
Got it. And if you had to pick, it's probably not even the right question to ask, but I'll ask it. If you had to choose between Periscope or Facebook Live, do you see people really using both, or there being a need for both?
So, I carry this guy right here.
It's not a weapon, I promise.
No, it's not. It's a dual stream device, so I can put more than one phone on here and actually stream to 2 services at the same time.
Who makes that device?
This is made by Archon. They make several live streaming devices for tripods and other mounts as well that you can get. So I do right now stream to Periscope and Facebook Live on there. If you forced me to pick from my research, the amount of time that I've done making videos, watching the community, and being a part of it, I would say Facebook Live, hands down, is being underrated in a lot of audiences that I'm talking to. Some people absolutely get it. Some people are still thinking Facebook is where I just do personal stuff.
Right.
And so they're not understanding. It's a shift in consumer behavior and consumer use to think, oh, I could create my own fan page and stream live from that. Oh, I could create my own Facebook group and actually stream live from that. I can stream live from my personal page, but if you really did Facebook right, those are like your friends. You're like, what would I want to stream to them? So you got to think differently if you really want to think about how I'm going to publish content and amass an audience on Facebook Live. But I think the resources, 100 engineers working on it, the deals that they've been doing. Hearst just announced that they're doing 200 Facebook Live shows per month, videos per month. AOL is like not even double down. They like triple down with like the VR and the lives combination, which is killer. And so I just think now it's time to produce content that requires appointment setting. Well, maybe not appointment setting. Some of it can be just spontaneous, but we need to create content that makes it interactive so that we're actually using the technology in a way that makes it compelling for them to watch it live.
The only thing that I'd want to add to that is that there's only 2 companies right now that can actually drive us to change our roadmaps. and that's Apple and Facebook. Like Facebook introduces a new technology, we stop on a dime and we rethink what we're doing because it can change everything we do. So sometimes we'll think about, okay, well, does 360 content make sense for us? Are we producing great 360 content? Well, if Facebook is doing it, we have to do it. You know, the same thing with...
You guys work in the same building as them, too.
Yeah, we do. And I have a meeting with them tomorrow. and I don't think they'd be upset with me saying that. But if they want to win, they will win because they have 2 billion people on their platform.
Yeah.
And they own distribution right now. So it makes sense for us to pivot to where they're going because we know that their opportunities are going to be successful.
Totally.
And it's the same thing with, you know, we know we're not talking about things like chatbots, but we're going to double down on that initiative because that's where Facebook is going, and it makes sense because we can then get our content in front of millions and billions of people by doing that.
Totally. Yeah, that's a really good point. And, you know, I'm curious, Keith, from Conviva's perspective, I know you guys are supporting, you work with the biggest entertainment companies and are supporting what they're doing in larger scales. How are you seeing this, you know, this consumer interest in live streaming affecting that? And are you guys, you know, working with any companies to help them, you know, live stream better? Any examples that come to mind?
Yeah, well, we work with the largest publishers. We also work with a lot of small publishers. So
Yep.
I always say that anyone who is a small publisher wants to be a big publisher. No one wants to just publish 10 people, right? So
Amen to that.
Even as, you know,
Just stick it small. That's it.
yeah, right. 10, I'm capped at 10, I'm good.
I don't want the check.
Right. Scale bad. No, but I think that's the key is that everybody puts content online for more people to watch it. And so, you know, we're always working with publishers large and small because it's fascinating to see when you talk about people who are starting their own brands, like you know, someone who decides they're going to strap a camera to their head and show their daily routine. That competes with Game of Thrones from HBO. I only have 2 eyeballs and 12 hours. I sleep 12. So I only have a limited attention span. So the great thing about the internet is it's the great equalizer, meaning that anyone can become a publisher. But again, it comes back to you're now competing against premium. You're not competing against, you know, I want to do video and we'll see what happens. So no matter if you're big or small, again, maybe every problem's a nail because I have a hammer, it still comes back to the fact that you have to make sure your experience is right because if people can't see, if you make great content, no matter how great it is, if it's unwatchable, it's not great content. And I always ask publishers, no matter how big or small, you still need an experience strategy. Right? I talk to publishers all the time, and they all have content strategies. They have device strategies. They have genre strategies. They have audience demographic strategies. But when you ask them, what's your experience strategy? How are you measuring it? How are you monitoring it? And how are you able to effectively make decisions about it to increase your audience's engagement? And it's surprising to me how many people just don't have an experience strategy. Yet again, it's probably one of the 2 most important things as a publisher you can do. Make great content, but importantly, make a great experience. So whether you have 1 subscriber watching your content, if you want to get to 2, guess what? You better make sure the first one's happy. If you want to get to 4, you better make sure your first 2 are happy. Or else you just create this cycle of people coming in the front door and out the back door. So the way to keep viewers' attention is to keep their eyeballs glued to the screen. Don't interrupt it.
Yeah, I think you're right, and we're not really seeing people doing that. But yeah, did you want to add something?
Yeah, what's going to be interesting to that point is Twitter and the NFL. They're going to be streaming games that are also available on linear channels. And so it really is going to come down to the presentation and what can Twitter do. And you know, the NFL left money on the table. They could have taken more money from other players out there, but what Twitter does in its global reach and its audience demographic in terms of being a younger audience, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how did they present a game with the tools and capabilities that you have within the Twitter platform compared to, say, CBS or NBC's broadcast of the exact same game. So you have the same programming, but what is your experience going to end up being? And you can look at both of those and do a side-by-side. And I'm very curious this fall to see what does Twitter's presentation look like. You know,
that'll be interesting to see because most people measure their experience strategy by Twitter. Right? That's how they measure if my audience is happy. They read their social network feed. So it will be interesting to see how Twitter's viewers respond on Twitter about Twitter's broadcast.
That experience better be good.
Absolutely.
Although technically they could just hide the bad tweets. They'll launch their curated algorithm newsfeed just in time for that, to hide it.
Right.
for those who don't know, there's rumors that Twitter will turn into more Facebook, where they automatically curate for you based on an algorithm instead of just showing you your feed in real time. Yeah, that's a good point, and I was going to ask you about that, Wayne, so I'm happy you commented on it. Do you think that, further, from your perspective, you guys are providing streams of high-quality content. Do you think, the fact that Mario can go to the Super Bowl and live stream it to his audience, that might compete with something like that? Like, do you think that as it becomes easier for anyone at an event to do it, it will ever be a big rights issue that your clients are going to have to shut down?
You're always going to run across a rights issue, and piracy's always something that's out there. And when we were building Eversport, there were a couple of core tenets we had to adhere to. One, make sure we're not distributing any piracy, so everything we distribute is licensed. If you get into the piracy game, and when I first started at Ustream, there was a lot of piracy on Ustream.
Yep.
And when I first came in, it's like, we need to get rid of all of that. There's no way I'm going to make any impact with rights holders if we're out there being their biggest enemy. So
Yep.
That was principle one. The second one was, and it kind of goes back to a question Mario was addressing in terms of, we need to give people a best-in-class streaming solution, but that's not really how you measure success anymore.
Yeah.
It's by our people watching.
Right.
And if you had that choice between Periscope and Facebook, yeah, it's a no-brainer. I mean, Facebook, the streaming part of it is at this point becoming very commodity. It works. People don't ask, does it work? Yes, it works. This isn't that hard anymore. It was when I first got into it 16 years ago at Yahoo. We were streaming at 300K or 50K, and it was like, oh, it sort of looks okay. Yeah. Now it's evolved enough where you can have a really nice broadcast from your phone. They measure success by, did people watch? Did people engage? Did you have a good experience? And whatever the user metric is, if it's uniques or how many videos did they watch, engagement time, how many countries. The Big Sky Conference is enamored with the fact that we're distributing their live games in 113 countries, or at least they're available globally, but 113 countries are represented in it. Right. And they find that part fascinating. So every content owner is going to have their own objective. But I think amateur programming, things shot, will it compete with the game itself? Absolutely. And that's, again, back to this Twitter experience. I'm very, very curious to see what the scientists over there are thinking about how to present programming. And to what you said earlier, that's going to compete with The Voice or whatever else is going on. And so, yeah, you can easily switch away and watch whatever you feel like watching, and it's on the content creator to make something engaging and make it interesting. It is democratized now. The technology is out there. Now you need to entertain people. Yep. and hold their attention.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The democratization of not saying that word right, but okay.
No worries. It's late in the day.
I was happy with it.
We'll let you get on with it.
But I mean, it goes past content creators, because I mean the truth is, like, for us at AOL, we just want you watching our content. We would like you to watch it on our brands, but you don't have to. Mm-hmm. Like, if we're not going onto Facebook and Periscope and all of these other platforms, Apple TV, we're doing a disservice to our users, and we're not giving them the content that they want to watch in the places that they want to watch them. So it shouldn't matter to us whether they want to watch TechCrunch content or Huffington Post content on Apple TV or on their phone or on HuffingtonPost.com. We want to be able to get it to them as easily as possible, and we want to still be able to make money off. Yeah. that's the bigger, when we talk about off-platform, that's the bigger question. But right now, that's not our focus. Yeah. Our focus is making sure we're getting that content into the hands of as many users as we can, wherever they are.
And I think, like, if I can jump in really quick, I think like when you're a large brand and you have a lot of resources and backing, you can actually do that, and you should be doing that like all day. It's about going into every single silo where they are to consume your content so that you're reaching them. I think the harder part is for smaller publishers, medium-sized publishers, or content developers that don't have all of those resources. Then you do have to strategically start picking and choosing, where do you start to place a lot of your effort? Where are you getting the most return on your investment? Where are you actually seeing retention happen? Where are you actually seeing conversion? If you're doing any forms of call to action, whether that's merchandise, joining a newsletter, doing some other action besides just viewing. How are you measuring all of that and on which platforms? And that means you shouldn't be looking at the platform, you should be looking at your audience.
Yep.
And so I think a lot of people are continually looking at platforms when they really should just be taking a step back and doing a survey on their audience. What do you guys actually watch? What social platforms do you actually use? How often do you use it? Oh, when you're on that social platform, do you actually share content, or do you just like scroll through it? Like, you really want to find out what are the needles in the haystack of that data about your audience, so that you can mirror that and then find out where they are. If you have smaller resources or less money to be able to test and experiment with, that's the better strategy. Well, that's the strategy that's worked well for us and for people that I know have done well with smaller budgets.
And speaking of, doing all that, you
But
mentioned.
he's right. I'm sorry, but I don't want to say that like you're not right.
No,
you're
yeah,
absolutely right that you can't focus. You got to go where everybody's at.
And so tell us quickly about the show you're producing, and more specifically, I know you're going to be, doing a live streamed talk show where everything is crowdsourced.
Yeah.
The guests, the topics. So how are you funding this? How big is, how are you producing it? Is it with your tripod thing? What are the specific details? How
Okay.
does one produce a show like that?
Yeah, this is a great question, because this is the differentiator that we're trying to go against. So we've been working on this concept, and I'll make this short because I don't want it to be too long.
Sure,
or
yeah.
feel like a commercial, but I do
In
think
about
it's
5 or so minutes, we'll start asking for participation.
do think it's kind of interesting for how the dynamic of what we're trying to do. So what we've looked at the marketplace and we've said, okay, first off, I come from talk background. So I come from radio, as you can probably tell. I come from radio. That plays a role, by the way, in your talent for live streaming. If they come from radio and they come from live radio, you should be really making sure that you're not dismissing them and you're looking at ways to use them in video, because they're the ones that really know how to react to things in real time. They know how to also play call. They know how to see things that are happening on a Twitter feed and still be able to incorporate that into a conversation without the conversation tripping over itself. So that's a skill set that fortunately I just happen to have over the years. And so we started really looking at how can we do the talk show, how can we deliver a talk show to our audience? So we surveyed our audience, we found out what they would really like to see. And we had created a Facebook group about a year prior to this. So we already had a test group of content that we were feeding with video already, but now we were expanding that into a talk show format. So what we've done specifically on the technical side of it, we partnered with Livestream. So Livestream is the backbone that's going to publish the feed. But what we're doing is we are enabling through our website and social media to actually allow viewers to say, here are the guests that we would like to see. Here are the topics that are of interest to us. Here are the questions once we get to what that show. So we take that information, put it through a system, and then we find out what's the hottest stuff that we should be producing right away. Once we figure out what we're going to produce, they get to ask the questions that I'll then give to our guests. So it's not even a personality-driven talk show. It's really a talk show for them, by them. We're just facilitating that creation of it. This is a 4-camera shoot. We're not using just Facebook Live or Periscope or any of these social apps. We're actually using real cameras to actually shoot this in studio with 50 guests. So this is costing us, roughly $500,000, which is really, really inexpensive for us to do 10 to 12 episodes to pull off. But we also have a team that we're paying out of our company, so the costs and stuff is we've been able to keep that down. The difference is, a talk show is a talk show. The difference is, if we want to be live and we want to create something that's actually for the viewer, so first off, it's a huge experiment in, can we crowdsource something? In other words, can we make the most relevant talk show possible for people that want to see this type of show? So that's the first thing. Can we knock that out of the park? And if we can knock that out of the park, then we know we'll win. But the coolest thing about it is giving people phone lines like Larry King Live to call in with their question, giving them a Periscope feed, Snapchat, Instagram. Like you said, wherever they are and whatever they want to use, they'll be able to ask their question, jump in on a poll, and be a part of the conversation in real time. We have screens that'll be on the set. We're going to be able to bring those feeds in. We can have performers. I can have this guy that's doing phenomenal on Periscope that's doing cooking stuff come on to the show if I wanted to have a virtual guest and do that. So it's more of a platform than a talk show. I think we're creating more of a platform because it's funny, I'm from traditional TV. You would be like, well, why didn't you just take your talk show to NBC and like maybe get that picked up and syndicate it that way? Because we actually tried. Like, we actually went to network after network after network, and they said, we don't understand how you're technically going to pull this off. B, it sounds really unfiltered. That's kind of scary. C, you're great. We love you as a talent, but your content is too positive. People don't want uplifting content, right? Literally, quote. People don't want uplift. They don't want to take notes while watching shows anymore.
At least for the next 8 years or so.
That's what they think anyway. So they're producing what they think an audience wants, whereas we're actually asking the audience, what do you want? And we're producing that.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately for NBC at least, the Neil Patrick Harris live experiment didn't go so well, which is a shame because it was a very cool show.
Yeah.
I have more questions which I'd love to ask, but since we're kind of wrapping up on time, does anyone in the audience have any questions they'd like to ask? Yes, please, and I'm just going to repeat the question after you ask it.
Mario, a quick question for you. I saw David Gregory the other day on CNN talking about his podcast, and all of a sudden we're reading about podcasting. Now, obviously we're the panel on live streaming, but I want to get your sense as to whether you think podcasting has legs, or is it going to fall by the wayside as live streaming progresses in popularity?
Just to repeat the question quickly,
Oh, good point.
he was asking about podcasting, and he was hearing David Gregory speak about it on CNN and wanted to know from Mario if podcasting has a future, has legs, or is live streaming going to take over?
Audio or video podcasting? Audio.
Audio podcasting.
So I would, if I was to look into the crystal balls, look, here's the research is podcasting is definitely successful, not for everybody. Podcasting has definitely grown phenomenally well. We've seen some mega hits, obviously, come out of that. Many things that were spun off from NPR, which tells you about the level of quality that was being put into those podcasts. But nonetheless, podcasts have been doing very, very well. There is, however, a recent New York Times article that just came out that was alluding to the problem of, is Apple giving enough support to podcasting, and do we have a future in this? I think people will always want to hear audio. I think people will always want to hear audio. And if you can create imagination of the mind, the problem I think is we need to get more creative with how we're really using it. The production values need to go higher, I think, with some of the podcasting. And people need to rethink. Like there's a woman that I know that's actually doing a podcast right now on a sports network, but she has no background in sports, by the way, none whatsoever, and this is for ESPN, no background in sports at all, but she's doing a complete narration about a particular sports person, but you don't know who that person is until the reveal at the end of her podcast. So she's doing all of these things, she's getting sound bites from other people, and she's doing some facts and all this interesting narration. It's more creative about the storytelling, and then you find out at the end, who is she talking about? And it's always going to be a sports figure. So I just think thinking differently about it is an opportunity.
Yeah, I agree, and I think with Serial becoming the most popular podcast ever, I think we're just seeing the beginning of it. Our podcast category at the Shorty Awards was more popular than ever before.
Good point.
So,
Great point.
any
I
other?
also think
yes,
that,
please.
just one thing, I think we need more platforms to support podcasts, because right now it is completely reliant on Apple, which is kind of the point of you need to, and I mean the Apple podcasting app is frankly terrible. So so they're not even supporting it that much. But once you see Spotify and Pandora,
And SoundCloud.
SoundCloud really supporting it more, I think that it'll continue to have legs outside of just I'm listening to this on my commute or within my car. I think once it changes the paradigm a little bit, it might change the success of it.
Check out an app called Anchor, Anchor. It's been out for a few months, still very, very new, but it's an audio-based social app, 2 minutes in length, and then you can say whatever you want for 2 minutes. people that follow you can then grab their phone, lift it up, and respond with their audio to your audio, and it starts creating like all of these audio feeds. So I think audio is not going away. I just think, like you said, and Anchor is one of those other places where you can get audio content. I think stuff like that's going to continue to grow.
That's really neat.
Yes, please.
I see graphics playing a role in live streaming. Is it all going to be socially based, or is there going to be more storytelling with graphics?
Great.
And video?
So the question was, how do you see graphics playing a role? Will it be social based only, or will we see a different role in storytelling specifically for live streaming?
Yeah, I'd say it really depends on the content vertical. In particular, in sports, we're at a point now. I mean, when I was a kid, there was nothing on the screen. It was just sort of the broadcast. And if I were to look at the screen now, and it was annoying at first, and then if I looked at the screen now and there wasn't something on there, I'd get a little bothered that there isn't something there. So certainly our appetites have evolved in what you expect a broadcast to be. A lot of pretty much everything, with the exception of one particular league, a European soccer league we stream, everything is commentary and graphics. It's not difficult to put it out there. The Big Sky Conference, I keep going back to them. I think because this is our first year with them, and the first year they were, last year when they were streaming with a different party, they did about 400 produced events, live games. And with this year, with what we're doing with them, we set them up for streaming everything in HD. They were able to create a broadcast for all of their sports. They're doing about 800 events with us a year. Getting them set up costs under $1,000 to produce the entire thing. Everything has commentary and graphics. So I think it really probably depends on the category you're talking about, but there is some level of graphics that are relevant and to some degree expected and necessary and annoying if it's not part of it.
Is it in stream with the video, or is
Yeah, it's produced.
He's asking if it was in stream within the video.
Yeah, it's produced for the stream. So it's inserted into the stream. It's nothing that we're doing. We're taking the feed they're pushing to us.
Right.
Through a local entry point and sending it to us through Akamai, and it's being produced on their end, not anything we're doing on our end.
I think a big key too is empowering content creators with the proper tools they're going to need. So like Snapchat is a great example of doing this and giving content creators the tools to create, to overlay text and put masks on top of each other and stuff like that. Like those are the kind of tools that we need to get out for live streamers so that they can create these things on their own. Whether that's just creating lower thirds or being able to draw on top of the content and the invisible layer or transparent layer on top of the video content. Like those are the things that are going to take live streaming and especially democratize live streaming into the next level of content creation. But I think you'll see a lot of that coming up soon.
Totally. So, yes, in the back.
Oh.
What's your thoughts on
Oh, there is.
the Verizon acquisition and how that plays into your product strategy, and you see other telcos coming into the content game?
And so just to repeat the question, sorry, just following the rules.
Yep.
For the question was for Drew, how do you see the Verizon acquisition of AOL playing into the product strategy? And what was the last part? Other telcos. In other telcos, do you think they'll jump into the game?
The acquisition for us has been amazing. Now that we're not we were always a big company, but now to have the backing of one of the largest companies in the world, they can help power our initiatives, whether it's content creation and whether it's distribution. So it's been a great opportunity for us. I think that being able to leverage the knowledge that Verizon has in terms of data and distribution means that we can not only distribute our content, but learn more about our users and what we should be creating. So, I think it's been great. I think working with them and being able to take on more of their content, which has been beneficial as well. And taking over a lot of Go90 and kind of reconceptualizing what that's going to be. So that's been beneficial for us. And then I think I can say that AOL's acquisition is not the last company that you're going to see purchased by a telco. Comcast, one of these, don't quote me on this, well, even though I'm talking to a camera, but someone's going to get bought. Comcast, one of these other companies is going to see the success that I've seen, that I think Verizon has had with their acquisition of us, and they're going to go down that same path. I can't talk about Yahoo, but if there was someone that was buying Yahoo, it would make sense. So
We'll have to call it
yeah.
AOL Who.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well.
And I've been told specifically, if you have questions about the Yahoo acquisition, contact Tim Armstrong. He'll be happy to talk about it. So
Great. Yes, in the back.
This morning I saw, Mario, you were talking about showing Facebook and the Periscope, this kind of added layer of interactivity in terms of the comments and that sort of thing. So and we're talking about content creation here and the ways that that can inform the way we create content. But what happens, I mean, in the production process, there's pre-production, there's production, there's post, and then there's archiving and like somehow capturing this. And if this is something, this extra layer of metadata in terms of comments and emoji and that sort of thing, how do you capture that? How does that not become just in the Facebook realm? Because that's not something that's going to happen, that you're sending up to the stream. That's something that happens once it leaves your device and goes up into the tool, whether it's Twitter or that sort of thing. How do you capture that and make that portable for some future use, or do you? Is it just forever? Are you at the mercy of this living on Facebook's servers?
Yeah, and so the question was, in terms of the fact that so much content is living on these platforms where you comment, filters, emojis, what happens in the archiving process, and is it possible to then bring it elsewhere, or is it just only living on Facebook until Zuckerberg decides not?
Yeah, I mean, in our case, we're capturing all of that as the show is happening, so we'll have that. But that's a different scenario than what I think you're probably more alluding to is like, the individual, or if someone's actually using the app and streaming from it, how can they capture all of those reactions and things, posts, all those other metadata pieces? So it's an interesting question, because what we had to do on Periscope was we had to do a workaround. So what we had to do on Periscope was actually use software to grab it, because there was another service that was actually capturing it for a limited time. And so we had to use a workaround to kind of download that content in order to get the hearts and the comments and all of that. Otherwise, I'm just playing what's on my camera roll, which is stripped from all the engagement, to your point. So it's like, what's the purpose of having archived video if you can't have the interaction that took place with that archived video? So I think right now, all of the platforms, they're looking at their, I guess maybe with the exception of Facebook, because they've also opened up their API, that alludes to me, as well as I know that they're also going to be giving us more insights to the metrics specifically around those reactions. So how we can use that in an archive way, I can't speculate on, but I understand your point. Like right now, the biggest thing that I just showed this morning was that with Facebook before last week or before 2 days ago, if you went live on Facebook Live and you showed up to a replay of a video, all the comments were there. Like everything that took place in that 20-minute video were already there. And that was just like it was horrible, because you were just like, what is all of this stuff? And now they have released an update where it's actually in replay. You're seeing the comment in real time, as you saw me do this morning, but for those that didn't, you're seeing the comment and the time code of that comment in real time. So you are feeling like you are watching it live again. And then, oh, by the way, even though I'm commenting and it's on replay, my comment is being inserted into the same stream. It's just a little bit different, because mine is grayed out and the other ones were red, indicating which was a live comment and which was a replay comment. But in terms of archiving, we've had to do some kind of like workarounds in order to really capture that. So we are kind of stuck for those pieces to the product itself, at least for now.
There's a cool company called Tomorrowish. I'm not sure what they're up to these days, but their whole business was around syndicating tweet comments, so you can like watch a Netflix show or a linear show with the tweets that actually happened when it first aired. I think the problem is, those tech companies rely on getting API and data access, like you were saying. So it's really, I believe it's in the hands of the tech companies. Any final questions? or comments? Yes, and this will probably be the last or second to last question. So the question was, are you able to embed Facebook live streams into your own website?
No. Quick answer is no. But look at a software called Stream, STRE.am. They have a kind of a workaround at the enterprise level that they're doing that can enable you to kind of bypass that, but still be able to embed it, but still have it play on Facebook Live if that's what you wanted.
Great. Yeah, and so any final question? Yes.
A lot of you guys kind of talked about engagement being extremely high, so let's say 20 minutes for the average version online. And obviously behavior patterns are very different. One of the biggest challenges is getting the audience there for that kind of content. So curious to hear, you talked a lot about experience to get people to make sure they enjoy what they're watching. Facebook is obviously a massive platform, billions of users, but what do you guys see as kind of developing the next piece, specifically around live, for getting audience there?
So great questions.
Like you can speak to the media buying landscape there, or promotional marketing and
Great question. And just to sum it up, you know, with these live streams, especially with there being 20 minutes on average of people viewing it, but how do you actually get people there? How do you market it? Is it by media? How do you get people to there in the first place if there's no simple remote to turn it on? And I added that to the question.
Yeah, I'll start. Sure. You know, I think a lot of it is, it's difficult because the other thing is it's not necessarily appointment watching. Like for us, our live streams are pretty erratic. You know, they might start because something's happening and we're covering it, or you know, our build events will start kind of randomly. You know, they'll be like 3 o'clock, but you don't know when the one's going to be. The advantage of live, especially with the platforms, is the ability to push content directly to the user as opposed to trying to pull them to your content. So on Facebook, we can then ping everyone that has liked Huffington Post and say, hey, we're live right now. Watch what we're doing. And so that's the biggest opportunity. And of course on this you have push notifications. So once you have the ability to say, hey, we've got something that's really interesting, you can't misuse this. But
Right.
But if you say we have something really interesting that you should be part of right now, that's going to be the most powerful opportunity to draw a user back in. And of course, there's always traditional media ways of bringing them in, but I think that's going to be the most successful way of doing it, which partially is why Facebook might win this game. But of course, I still get 30 push notifications from Periscope a day saying, hey, I think you should watch this. And I watch it, and it's usually a guy and his cat. So that's about it.
Well said.
Yeah.
Okay, great. On that note, we're just on time like I'd hoped. So let's give our panelists a big round of applause. And we'll see you at the cocktail hour.